March 1943. RAF Debden Airfield, England. Major Don Blakeslee, veteran American fighter pilot flying with the RAF, stands on the tarmac watching a Republic P-47 Thunderbolt taxi toward him. It's the first Thunderbolt assigned to the 4th Fighter Group, and Blakeslee hates it on sight. The P-47 is massive. At 14,000 pounds fully loaded, it weighs twice as much as the Supermarine Spitfire Blakeslee has been flying. The radial engine, a massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp with 18 cylinders, dominates the nose, giving the aircraft a blunt, ungainly appearance. "Christ, it looks like a milk bottle with wings," Blakeslee mutters. His pilots gather around the new aircraft, their faces showing uniform skepticism. These are experienced fighter pilots who've been flying nimble Spitfires in combat for months. The Spitfire is elegant, responsive, a pilot's airplane. The Thunderbolt looks like a flying truck. "Sir," asks Captain Don Gentile, "why are they replacing our Spitfires with this? It's enormous. How is something this heavy supposed to dogfight German fighters?" Blakeslee circles the P-47, examining it with professional disdain. The aircraft is 7 tons of aluminum, steel and radial engine. The cockpit sits far back on the fuselage, giving terrible forward visibility on the ground. The wings are thick, necessary to house fuel tanks and landing gear, but terrible for aerodynamics. Everything about the design screams heavy and slow. "Gentlemen," Blakeslee addresses his assembled pilots, "I don't like this airplane any more than you do. It's too big, too heavy, too ugly. But 8th Air Force says we're converting to Thunderbolts, so we're converting. We'll learn to fight in this thing, even if it's a flying bathtub." The pilots nickname it immediately. The Jug, short for Juggernaut, a reference to its massive, unstoppable appearance. It's not a compliment. Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Zemke, commander of the 56th Fighter Group, the first unit to fly P-47s in combat, tries to defend the aircraft to Blakeslee's skeptical pilots. "Listen," Zemke explains. "The P-47 isn't a Spitfire. It's not supposed to be. It's designed for a different mission. Long-range bomber escort. The Spitfire can't carry enough fuel to escort B-17s deep into Germany. The Thunderbolt can." "But can it fight?" Blakeslee asks bluntly. "When a Focke-Wulf 190 jumps our bombers at 25,000 feet, can this 7-ton truck turn with it? Can it climb with it? Can it survive?" "I don't know yet," Zemke admits. "We're about to find out." April 8, 1943. First combat mission. The 4th Fighter Group launches its first P-47 combat mission, bomber escort to Antwerp, Belgium. 56 Thunderbolts, heavy, unfamiliar, ungainly, climb laboriously toward 25,000 feet. Blakeslee leads the formation, wrestling with the P-47's controls. The aircraft feels wrong, too heavy, too slow to respond. The controls require excessive force. Pull the stick, and the P-47 eventually responds, but not with the instant snap response of a Spitfire. "Blue Leader, this is Blue 3, calls Lieutenant Dwayne Beeson. "These things fly like trucks. How are we supposed to dogfight in them?" "We're not," Blakeslee responds. "Stick with the bombers, defensive formation. If Germans attack, we protect the B-17s. We don't chase individual fighters." The mission proceeds without incident. No Luftwaffe fighters appear. The Thunderbolts escort the bombers to target and back, proving they can reach the combat zone, but proving nothing about their ability to fight. Back at Debden, pilots debrief. The consensus is unanimous. The P-47 is inadequate. "It's too heavy," Gentile reports. "Climbs slowly, turns slowly, feels like flying a truck." "Forward visibility is terrible," adds another pilot. "That huge radial engine blocks everything. On the ground you can't see forward at all. In combat, the nose obscures targets." "And the guns," Lieutenant Robert Johnson complains. 8 50 caliber machine guns. Sounds impressive. But they're spread across the wings. Convergence is set at 300 yards. Inside that range, bullets spray everywhere. Outside that range, they're too dispersed. Compared to the Spitfire's tight gun grouping, much more effective. Blakeslee writes his assessment for 8th Air Force Headquarters. The P-47 is unsuitable for air combat against German fighters. Request permission to retain Spitfires. The request is denied. The conversion to Thunderbolts continues. April 15th, 1943. Luftwaffe assessment. At Jagdgeschwader 2, JG2 headquarters in France, Luftwaffe intelligence officers brief German fighter pilots on the new American fighter appearing over Europe. The Americans have introduced a new fighter, Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, the intelligence officer explains, displaying reconnaissance photos. Note the size, it's enormous. Wingspan 40 feet, length 36 feet, weight approximately 6,000 kilograms fully loaded. That's twice the weight of our Focke-Wulf 190. The assembled Luftwaffe pilots examine the photos with professional interest and amusement. It's fat, observes Major Egon Mayer, an experienced fighter ace with 63 kills. Look at that radial engine. The fuselage is like a barrel. How can something that heavy maneuver? American engineering, another pilot jokes. They build everything big and heavy. Their bombers are flying fortresses. Now their fighters are flying tanks. The intelligence officer continues. Initial combat reports suggest the P-47 is slow to climb, slow to turn, and has poor forward visibility. Our tactical assessment. This aircraft is not a serious threat in air combat. It may have long range for bomber escort, but it cannot compete with the FW-190 or Bf-109 in a dogfight. What's its armament? Asks Major Joseph Sepp Vermheller, a veteran with 93 kills. 8 wing-mounted 50 caliber machine guns. Impressive firepower, but wing-mounted guns are less accurate than centerline cannon. Our assessment stands. Dangerous in a head-on attack due to sheer volume of fire, but vulnerable in turning combat where the 190 and 109 excel. Major Mayer studies the photographs. It looks like a jug, a fat milk jug with wings. I think we should be more concerned about the Spitfire than this American monstrosity. The Thunderbolt is too heavy to be a fighter. The intelligence assessment is filed. P-47 Thunderbolt, low threat, inferior maneuverability, avoid head-on attacks, engage in turning combat where FW-190 and Bf-109 superiority will prevail. It's a fatal miscalculation. April 17, 1943. First blood. The 4th Fighter Group encounters Luftwaffe fighters for the first time while flying P-47s. 24 Thunderbolts are escorting B-17s over Belgium when 12 Focke-Wulf 190s attack. Major Blakeslee sees the German fighters diving from 30,000 feet, attacking the bombers in classic hit-and-run tactics. Bandits, 6 o'clock high, break right. The P-47s turn to engage. Immediately, the German tactical advantage becomes apparent. The FW-190s are faster in the climb, tighter in the turn. They slash through the American formation, firing quick bursts at the bombers, then zooming away before the Thunderbolts can respond. Blakeslee chases a 190, pulling hard on the stick. The P-47 turns, slowly, ponderously, like a truck taking a corner. The 190 simply outturns him, reversing and getting on Blakeslee's tail. "Jesus, this thing won't turn!" Blakeslee yells, rolling violently to evade. The 190 fires, tracers streaking past his canopy. Blakeslee does the only thing possible in a heavy aircraft. He dives. The P-47 plunges earthward, accelerating rapidly. At 400 miles per hour, 450 miles per hour, 500 miles per hour, the airspeed indicator climbs. The 190 follows, but at 500 miles per hour, something interesting happens. The P-47 starts pulling away. He's not keeping up, Blakeslee realizes. At extreme speed, the heavy Thunderbolt is actually faster than the lighter German fighter. The 190 breaks off pursuit at 15,000 feet, unable to match the P-47's dive speed. Blakeslee pulls out of the dive at 8,000 feet, his airspeed touching 550 miles per hour. The P-47 groans under the G-forces, but holds together. A Spitfire would have shed its wings at this speed. The 190 would have disintegrated. But the Thunderbolt, overbuilt, massively strong, survives. "All aircraft, reform on me," Blakeslee calls. "Everybody okay?" The responses come in. No losses. Several pilots damaged by German fire, but all aircraft operational. The first engagement is a draw, no kills for either side. But Blakeslee has learned something critical. The P-47 can't turn with German fighters, but it can outdive them. And when damaged, it survives. Back at Debden, Blakeslee calls his pilots together. The Jug won't dogfight, we know that now. But I dove away from a 190 today, and he couldn't stay with me. At high speed, we're faster. And this airplane is tough. I took hits that would have downed a Spitfire. The P-47 kept flying. So what's the tactic? Gentile asks. We don't turn with them, Blakeslee decides. We fight vertical, not horizontal. Dive attacks. Boom and zoom. Use our weight as an advantage. We dive faster than they can. Hit hard, dive away, climb back up, repeat. We're not dogfighters anymore. We're snipers. It's the beginning of a tactical revolution. May 1943, the learning curve. Over the next month, American P-47 pilots learn to fight in their heavy fighters. The learning is painful. Losses mount as pilots try traditional turning dogfights against superior turning German aircraft. Lieutenant Robert Johnson, flying with the 56th Fighter Group, learns the hard way. On May 14th, he engages a formation of FW-190s, trying to outturn them in a horizontal dogfight. Mistake, Johnson recounts later. The 190 turned inside me easily, got on my six, and shot the hell out of my airplane. Rounds hitting the fuselage, the wings, the tail. I thought I was dead. Johnson's P-47 takes catastrophic damage. Engine hit, hydraulics destroyed, oxygen system shredded, cockpit shot to pieces. Any other fighter would have gone down, but the P-47's massive radial engine acts as armour, absorbing rounds that would have reached the cockpit. The aircraft's robust structure holds together despite dozens of hits. Johnson nurses the crippled Thunderbolt across the English Channel, crash landing at the first airfield he reaches. Mechanics count the damage: 21 cannon hits, over 200 machine gun hits. The aircraft is a write-off, but Johnson walks away alive. The Jug saved my life, Johnson tells his squadron mates. A Spitfire would have exploded. The P-47 just kept flying. The lesson spreads through the fighter groups. Don't dogfight. Don't turn with 190s or 109s. Use the P-47's strengths: speed, dive performance, structural strength, and devastating firepower. Colonel Zemke formalizes the tactics in a memo to all P-47 units. Tactical employment of P-47 Thunderbolt. Do not engage in sustained turning combat. Attempt to outclimb enemy fighters from low altitude. Slow down to match enemy speed. Fight alone. Do maintain high altitude advantage. Attack from above in diving passes. Use superior dive speed to disengage. Fight in coordinated pairs. Finger 4 formation. Exploit superior firepower in head-on attacks. Trust the aircraft's structural strength when damaged. Remember, the P-47 is not a dogfighter. It's an energy fighter. Speed and altitude are your advantages. Never surrender them for turning combat. Slowly, painfully, American pilots learn to fight the P-47's way instead of trying to force it to fight like a Spitfire, and the kill ratios begin to change. June 1943, the emergence of tactics. Captain Walker, Bud Mahurin, of the 56th Fighter Group, becomes one of the first P-47 pilots to truly master the aircraft's unique capabilities. On June 12, 1943, he demonstrates the new tactical approach that will define Thunderbolt combat. Mahurin is escorting B-17s at 28,000 feet when 8 FW-190s attack from below, climbing to engage the bombers. Traditional fighter tactics would dictate turning to meet the threat. Mahurin does the opposite. I maintained altitude, Mahurin explains in his debriefing. Let them climb toward us. They're burning energy to gain altitude. I'm conserving energy by staying high. When they got close, I rolled inverted and dove. The P-47, 7 tons of aircraft accelerated by gravity, plunges toward the climbing 190s. At 450 miles per hour, Mahurin closes the distance in seconds. His 8 50 caliber machine guns, collectively firing 100 rounds per second, converge on the lead FW-190. 500 yards, 400, 300, Mahurin counts down the range. At 300 yards, where the P-47's guns converge, he fires a 2-second burst. The effect is devastating. Unlike the 20mm cannon on German fighters, powerful but slow firing, the P-47's 8 machine guns create a wall of lead. In 2 seconds, 200 rounds tear into the FW-190. The German fighter disintegrates. He just came apart, Mahurin reports. Wings separated. Airplane went into a spin. Pilot never got out. Mahurin doesn't pursue the remaining German fighters. He continues his dive past the combat, building speed to 500 miles per hour, then pulls up in a climbing zoom back to altitude. By the time the 190s react, Mahurin is back at 28,000 feet, repositioning for another attack. That's the key, Mahurin tells his squadron. Never give up your altitude. Attack downward, use speed, hit hard, zoom back up. The P-47 accelerates like a freight train in a dive. Nothing can catch us. And when we hit something with 850s, it doesn't survive. June 26, 1943. Mahurin scores his second kill using identical tactics, then his third. By July, he has 5 kills, officially an ace, all scored using boom and zoom tactics that exploit the P-47's weight and power. Other pilots adopt the method. Lieutenant Robert Johnson scores his first kill on June 13th using a diving attack. Major Gerald Johnson, no relation, scores 3 kills in one mission on July 30th, all from high-speed diving passes. The Thunderbolt's reputation begins to shift. It's not a bad fighter. It's a different fighter that requires different tactics. July 1943. The deep penetration problem. As American pilots learn to fight in the P-47, a new challenge emerges: range. B-17 bombers are striking targets deeper into Germany, Frankfurt, Stuttgart, even Berlin. But the P-47, despite its large fuel capacity, can only escort them so far before having to turn back. The arithmetic is cruel. P-47 combat radius, July 1943. Internal fuel, 305 gallons. Fuel consumption, 100 gallons per hour, combat conditions. Total endurance, 3 hours. Time to target, 200 miles, 45 minutes. Time at target, 15 minutes. Combat time returning, 45 minutes. Reserve required, 45 minutes. Maximum escort range, 175 miles from England. German fighters are aware of this limitation. They simply wait beyond the P-47's range, attacking bombers after the escorts turn back. "We're escorting them to the German border," Blakeslee complains, "then watching them fly into hell alone. We need more range." Republic Aviation, manufacturer of the P-47, offers a solution: external drop tanks. Large fuel tanks mounted under the wings or fuselage, carrying an additional 75 to 150 gallons, dropped when empty or when entering combat. The first 75-gallon drop tanks arrive in August 1943. They're crude, non-jettisonable, reducing performance even when empty. But they extend range to 230 miles. Larger 108-gallon tanks arrive in September, extending range to 280 miles. But it's not enough. Berlin is 600 miles from England. Even with drop tanks, P-47s can only escort bombers halfway to the most critical targets. "We need bigger tanks," Zemke demands. 200 gallons, 300, whatever it takes to reach Berlin. Republic engineers respond, "Larger tanks will significantly degrade performance. The P-47 already has speed and climb problems. Adding 300 gallons under the fuselage will make it worse." "We don't need performance on the way to the target," Zemke counters. "We need range. Once we drop the tanks before combat, performance returns to normal. Build the biggest tanks possible." By October 1943, 150-gallon drop tanks are in production. By December, experimental 200-gallon tanks are being tested. The P-47's range steadily increases: 300 miles, 350 miles, 400 miles. But there's a problem. Even with maximum drop tanks, the P-47 still can't reach Berlin and return. The deepest targets in Germany remain beyond escort range. The solution will come from an unexpected source. Not better tanks, but better engines. August 1943. The FW-190 encounters reality. Luftwaffe pilots, confident in their technical superiority, continue engaging P-47s in what they assume will be easy victories. The results are increasingly surprising. Major Egon Meyer, the pilot who dismissed the P-47 as too fat to fight in April, encounters Thunderbolts on August 17, 1943, during the raid on Schweinfurt. Mayer leads his FW-190s in an attack on B-17 bombers, diving through the formation, firing at the bombers. As he pulls up to re-engage, 4 P-47s dive on his formation from above. "They came from the sun," Mayer reports. "High-speed diving attack. I broke left, normal evasive. But the Americans didn't follow into the turn. They continued straight down through our formation, firing as they passed, then zoomed back to altitude." One of Mayer's wingmen explodes under the concentrated fire of 8.50 caliber guns. Another FW-190 trails smoke, diving away with engine damage. Mayer tries to pursue the climbing P-47s, but they're accelerating upward, using momentum from their dive to regain altitude. His FW-190, excellent in turning combat, can't match the P-47's energy-fighting tactics. "They won't dogfight," Mayer observes in his debriefing. "They maintain altitude advantage, dive for one pass, then zoom back up. If we turn to engage, they don't follow. They just climb back up and attack again. It's frustrating. We can't force them into turning combat where we have advantage." By September 1943, Luftwaffe tactical assessments are being revised. Updated P-47 threat assessment. The American P-47 Thunderbolt is more dangerous than initial evaluations suggested. While the aircraft cannot match FW-190 or Bf-109 in turning combat, it employs vertical tactics that exploit superior dive speed and zoom climb. Recommended counter tactics. Avoid extended combat at high altitude, where P-47 has advantage. Force combat to low altitude, where FW-190 has better performance. Engage only when P-47 is at disadvantage, low, slow, or damaged. Beware head-on attacks. P-47 carries 8.50 caliber guns with devastating combined firepower. The Fat Jug is no longer dismissed as harmless. October 14, 1943, Black Thursday. The Schweinfurt-Regensburg raids, attacking ball-bearing factories deep in Germany, prove the desperate need for long-range escort. Without fighter protection over the target, B-17s suffer catastrophic losses. 60 bombers shot down, 600 crew killed or captured, out of 291 aircraft dispatched. The 8th Air Force temporarily suspends deep penetration raids. Bombers won't return to Germany's interior until long-range escort can be provided. P-47 pilots, forced to turn back at the German border and watch bombers fly to their deaths, are furious. "We have the best fighter in the theatre," Lieutenant Johnson says bitterly, "but we can't protect the bombers where they need us most. We need range. We need to reach Berlin." Republic Aviation's solution arrives in November 1943. The P-47D-25 variant with increased internal fuel capacity, 370 gallons versus 305 gallons, and provisions for larger external tanks. With the new model and the 150-gallon drop tanks, range extends to 475 miles. With experimental 200-gallon tanks, range reaches 550 miles. It's still not enough to reach Berlin, 600 miles, but it's close. More importantly, it's enough to escort bombers to most critical German industrial targets. The deep penetration missions resume in November 1943, this time with P-47 escort reaching deeper into Germany than ever before. German fighters, accustomed to attacking unescorted bombers, now face Thunderbolts over their own territory. The air war's dynamics shift fundamentally. November 1943, the meat grinder. With extended range, P-47s begin fighting over Germany itself. The Luftwaffe, defending its homeland, commits maximum resources. The air battles become massive, 100-plus aircraft dogfights, desperate German attacks on bomber formations, savage aerial combat. November 26, 1943, Bremen raid. 50 P-47s escort bombers to the target. Over Bremen, 80-plus German fighters attack. The battle lasts 40 minutes of continuous combat. Captain Robert Johnson finds himself in the fight of his life. Separated from his flight, alone, facing 6 FW-190s. "They had me surrounded," Johnson recounts. 6 of them, circling, taking turns attacking. "I couldn't run, too deep in Germany, not enough fuel to outrun them to England. I had to fight." Johnson uses everything the P-47 offers. When a 190 gets on his tail, he dives, accelerating to 500 miles per hour where the German can't follow. When they try head-on attacks, he meets them with 8.50 caliber guns. When they damage his aircraft, and they do, repeatedly, the Thunderbolt absorbs punishment and keeps flying. The battle lasts 15 minutes. Johnson shoots down 2 FW-190s, probably destroys a third, damages 2 others. When the Germans finally break off, low on ammunition and fuel, Johnson limps home with 47 new holes in his aircraft. "The P-47 saved me again," Johnson tells intelligence officers. "Any other fighter, I'd be dead or captured. But the Jug just kept taking hits and flying. And when I got a chance to shoot, those 850s are deadly. You hit something with all 8 guns, it doesn't survive." December 11, 1943, Emden Raid. The 56th Fighter Group encounters the largest German fighter formation they've ever seen. Over 150 Bf-109s and FW-190s attacking the bomber stream. Colonel Zemke leads 48 P-47s into the maelstrom. The battle is chaos. Hundreds of aircraft swirling in a massive furball, tracers everywhere, aircraft falling burning from the sky. The Thunderbolts wade into the battle using their new tactics. Pairs of aircraft supporting each other, diving attacks from altitude, aggressive use of superior firepower, willingness to take damage knowing their aircraft can survive it. The 56th Fighter Group claims 23 German fighters destroyed, 8 probables, 12 damaged. American losses: 4 P-47s shot down, but 3 pilots rescued. The kill ratio, nearly 6-1 in favour of the Thunderbolts, proves the tactical evolution is working. "We're not flying the P-47 like a Spitfire anymore," Zemke reports. "We're flying it like a P-47, and when we do that, we win." By December 1943, P-47 units have claimed over 400 German aircraft destroyed. The Fat Jug has become the scourge of the Luftwaffe. January 1944, Luftwaffe crisis. At Luftwaffe High Command in Berlin, the statistics are alarming. General Adolf Galland, General der Jagdflieger, General of Fighter Forces, reviews monthly loss reports with growing concern. Luftwaffe fighter losses, October to December 1943. October, 277 fighters destroyed, 146 pilots killed. November, 369 fighters destroyed, 183 pilots killed. December, 456 fighters destroyed, 215 pilots killed. "We're losing fighters faster than we can replace them," Galland tells his staff. More critically, "We're losing experienced pilots. The Americans are killing our aces." An intelligence officer presents analysis. The American P-47 Thunderbolt has emerged as the primary threat. Initially dismissed as inferior, it has proven extremely effective using vertical fighting tactics. German pilots report the P-47 is nearly impossible to shoot down. It absorbs catastrophic damage and continues fighting. Meanwhile, its 8.50 caliber guns destroy our aircraft with single bursts. "The aircraft we called too fat to fight is killing us," Galland says bitterly. "How many aces have we lost to P-47s? The list is sobering. Luftwaffe aces killed by P-47s, 1943. Major Egon Meyer, 102 kills, shot down by P-47, December 1943, survived, wounded. Oberleutnant Kurt Uben, 110 kills, killed by P-47, November 1943. Hauptmann Hans Philipp, 206 kills, killed by P-47, October 1943. Oberleutnant Erwin Clausen, 132 kills, killed by P-47, December 1943. "These are our most experienced pilots," Galland emphasises. "Men with hundreds of kills, years of combat experience, irreplaceable skills. And the Americans are shooting them down with an aircraft we dismissed as harmless." "What are our counter-tactics?" asks Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, head of the Luftwaffe. "There are no effective counter-tactics," Galland admits. "The P-47 fights at high altitude where it has advantage. Our pilots try to force them low, but the Americans refuse engagement on our terms. They maintain altitude, attack from above, and disengage by diving away at speeds we cannot match. So we're losing, Goering states flatly. We're losing the war of attrition, Galland confirms. Every raid, we shoot down bombers but lose fighters. The Americans replace their losses, both bombers and fighters. We cannot replace ours. The mathematics are unsustainable. January 11th, 1944. The Halberstadt mission. Major James Howard of the 354th Fighter Group demonstrates exactly what the P-47 can do in the hands of a skilled pilot, and why the Luftwaffe's situation is desperate. Howard is escorting B-17s to Halberstadt when his flight becomes separated from the main formation. He finds himself alone, one P-47 against 30-plus German fighters attacking the bombers. I should have withdrawn, Howard recounts later. One fighter against 30 is suicide tactics, but the bombers needed help, so I attacked. For 30 minutes, Howard fights the entire German formation alone. Using classic boom and zoom tactics, he dives into the German fighters, scatters them with his 850 caliber guns, climbs back to altitude, and attacks again. I wasn't trying to shoot them all down, Howard explains. I was trying to disrupt their attacks on the bombers. Every time they set up an attack run, I dove through their formation. They had to break off to avoid me. It kept them occupied, fighting me instead of killing bombers. Howard shoots down 4 German fighters confirmed, probably destroys 2 more, damages several others. His P-47 takes multiple hits, 20mm cannon rounds, machine gun fire, but continues fighting. When Howard finally returns to base, his aircraft is a wreck. Holes throughout the fuselage, hydraulics damaged, control surfaces shot up. But it flew home. For his actions, Howard receives the Medal of Honor, the only fighter pilot in the European theatre to receive the award for aerial combat. More importantly, his mission demonstrates the P-47's capability. One determined pilot in a Thunderbolt can engage 30 German fighters and survive, fighting at a disadvantage in numbers, but advantage in tactics and durability. That's what terrifies the Germans, notes intelligence officer Major Karl Spartz. They can outnumber us, outmaneuver us technically, have better trained pilots with more experience, and we still win because the P-47 lets our pilots fight aggressively, take damage, and survive to fight again. February 1944. Big Week. Operation Argument, known as Big Week, launches in late February 1944. Coordinated maximum effort bomber raids against German aircraft factories. The goal? Destroy the Luftwaffe's production capacity and force their fighters into battles of attrition the Germans cannot win. February 20th to 25th, 1944. 6 consecutive days of massive raids. Over 3,800 bomber sorties, escorted by 3,673 fighter sorties, most flown by P-47s. The Luftwaffe responds with maximum force. Every available fighter scrambles to defend the factories. The air battles are enormous, the largest of the war. February 22nd, 1944. 417 B-17s attack Schweinfurt, Gotha, and Regensburg. The Luftwaffe sends up 350-plus fighters. Over 60 P-47s escort the bombers deep into Germany. The 56th Fighter Group encounters the main German force near Frankfurt, over 100 Bf-109s and FW-190s forming for attack. There were so many of them, recalls Lieutenant Francis Gabreski, that you couldn't avoid combat. You just waded in and started shooting. The battle is a savage free-for-all. P-47s dive through German formations, guns blazing. German fighters attack from all angles, above, below, head-on. Aircraft fall on both sides, but the P-47's advantages prove decisive. Survivability. Multiple Thunderbolts take 30-plus hits each and continue fighting. The massive radial engine absorbs damage that would destroy liquid-cooled engines. The robust airframe holds together under catastrophic damage. Firepower. The 8.50 caliber guns, when all converge on a target, destroy it instantly. German pilots report P-47 fire as devastating. Aircraft literally disintegrate under the concentrated barrage. Dive performance. When outnumbered or in trouble, P-47 pilots dive away at 500-plus miles per hour. German fighters cannot follow at these speeds. Their aircraft would break up from stress. Endurance. With drop tanks, P-47s can fight for hours at combat power. German fighters, limited by fuel, must break off combat to return to base. The 56th Fighter Group claims 14 German fighters destroyed that day. The entire P-47 force claims 61 kills. Losses: 11 P-47s, but 8 pilots rescued. Over the 6 days of Big Week, P-47 units claim 288 German fighters destroyed. Luftwaffe records confirm 299 fighters lost. The correlation is remarkably accurate, proving American pilots aren't overclaiming. More critically, Big Week costs the Luftwaffe 17% of its fighter pilots killed or wounded, including many experienced aces. The pilot shortage becomes critical. We're killing them faster than they can train replacements, Blakeslee observes. Every mission, we face more inexperienced German pilots. They make mistakes, they die, and the veterans who remain are exhausted, flying too many missions, taking too many risks. March 1944, the Berlin raids. The ultimate test, Berlin. 600 miles from England, the deepest penetration possible, the most heavily defended target in Germany. March 4, 1944, first Berlin raid. 730 bombers escorted by 801 fighters, including 174 P-47s carrying maximum fuel, 370 gallons internal, 200 gallons external drop tanks. We're going to Berlin, Zemke tells his pilots. Maximum range. We'll have maybe 20 minutes over the target before we have to turn back. Use it well. The mission is a test of endurance. P-47 pilots fly 4+ hours to reach Berlin, fight over the target for 20 minutes, then fly 4+ hours home. Total mission time, 8.5 hours in the cockpit. It was exhausting, Lieutenant Robert Johnson recalls. 8.5 hours sitting in a cramped cockpit, wearing oxygen mask, at high altitude in freezing temperatures. Then 20 minutes of intense combat in the middle. Then the long flight home hoping your fuel holds out. Over Berlin, the Luftwaffe sends up 500+ fighters. The air battle is massive, the largest of the war. P-47s wade into German formations, protecting the bombers despite being heavily outnumbered. The 56th Fighter Group encounters 40+ Bf-109s attacking B-17s. Despite being outnumbered 2-1, the Thunderbolts attack aggressively. We dove from 28,000 feet, Blakeslee reports, straight through the German formation. I got on a 109's tail, fired a burst, saw him explode. Pulled up, found another target, dove again. The P-47 just keeps accelerating. The 109s couldn't match our dive speed. Blakeslee shoots down 2 Bf-109s. His wingman gets one. Other flights add to the total. By mission's end, the 56th claims 15 German fighters destroyed. American losses are heavy. 69 bombers shot down, 11 fighters lost including 5 P-47s. But the mission proves the point. P-47s can reach Berlin and fight effectively. The Germans know we can reach them anywhere now, Zemke notes. There's nowhere in Germany safe from American fighters. That changes everything. The psychological impact on the Luftwaffe is severe. Previously, German fighters could retreat to bases deep in Germany, beyond escort range. Now, P-47s appear over those bases. German fighters are forced to engage or watch bombers destroy their infrastructure. The war of attrition accelerates, and the mathematics favour America. April 1944, Luftwaffe collapse. By spring 1944, the Luftwaffe fighter force is collapsing under attrition. Luftwaffe Day fighter strength. January 1944, 1,650 fighters operational. February 1944, 1,430 fighters operational. March 1944, 1,290 fighters operational. April 1944, 1,125 fighters operational. We're losing 140 fighters per month net, Galland reports to Goering. Production is replacing losses, but we cannot replace pilots. We've lost over 1,000 fighter pilots killed or seriously wounded in 4 months. The replacement pilots have minimal training, 50 hours in type before combat. American pilots have 200+ hours. The new pilots are being killed on their first or second missions, Galland continues. They don't understand energy fighting. They try to turn with P-47s, which seems logical because the P-47 is heavy, but the Americans don't turn. They fight vertically. Our new pilots don't recognize the tactics until it's too late. The statistics are devastating. Average survival time, Luftwaffe fighter pilots 1944. Veteran pilot, 50+ missions, 6.5 months. Experienced pilot, 10 to 49 missions, 3 months. New pilot, 0 to 9 missions, 4.7 missions. We're bleeding to death, Galland concludes. And the primary cause is American fighters, especially the P-47. It's killing our experienced pilots through attrition and our new pilots through technical superiority. May 1944, the final score. By D-Day, June 6, 1944, the air war over Europe is effectively over. The Luftwaffe still exists, still fights, but it's been defeated through attrition. P-47 Thunderbolt units have claimed over 3,000 German aircraft destroyed in air combat, more than any other Allied fighter type. P-47 combat record through May 1944. Air-to-air, 3,082 German aircraft destroyed, 1,573 probables, 2,141 damaged. Loss rate, 0.7 P-47s lost per German aircraft destroyed. Survivability, 60% of P-47s hit by enemy fire returned to base. Average damage sustained, 47 hits before loss. Pilot survival rate when aircraft lost, 42%, highest of any fighter. Top P-47 aces, Francis Gabreski, 28 kills. Robert S. Johnson, 27 kills. Walker Mahurin, 21 kills. Fred Christensen, 21.5 kills. Gerald Johnson, 16.5 kills. The aircraft dismissed as too fat to fight has become the premier aerial combat weapon of the European theatre. We called it a jug, Colonel Zemke reflects, a milk bottle, a flying bathtub. We hated it at first, but the P-47 taught us how to fight differently, not through finesse and dogfighting, but through energy management and aggressive tactics. It forced us to evolve beyond traditional fighter doctrine. And once we learned its strengths, the dive performance, the structural toughness, the devastating firepower, we became unstoppable. The Germans couldn't compete, not because their aircraft were inferior, but because our tactics exploited advantages they couldn't counter. The P-47 wasn't the most elegant fighter, it was the most effective fighter, and in war, effective beats elegant every time. June 1944, D-Day and beyond. With the Luftwaffe largely defeated in the air-to-air role, P-47 Thunderbolts transitioned to a new mission, ground attack. The same characteristics that made the P-47 effective in air combat, structural strength, heavy firepower, ability to absorb damage, make it devastatingly effective against ground targets. June 6, 1944, D-Day, Normandy, France. Over 1,000 P-47s participate in Operation Overlord, the invasion of Normandy. Their mission? Suppress German ground forces, destroy transportation infrastructure, prevent German reinforcements from reaching the beaches. The 365th Fighter Group, the Hell Hawks, demonstrates the P-47's new role. Flying from English bases, they attack German positions along the Normandy coast before the invasion begins. We came in low, recalls Captain Arlo Henry. 50 feet above the ground, 350 miles per hour, looking for targets. German trucks, tanks, artillery positions, troop concentrations, anything that could threaten the invasion. The P-47's 8.50 caliber machine guns proved devastating against ground targets. The guns fire armor-piercing incendiary API rounds, bullets designed to penetrate light armor and start fires. Against a truck convoy, one P-47 makes a strafing pass, 8 guns firing. In 3 seconds, 150 rounds tear through the vehicles. Trucks explode, ammunition detonates, fuel tanks ignite. The convoy is destroyed. Against German armor, P-47s cannot penetrate heavy tank armor with machine gun fire, but they can destroy light armor, suppress anti-aircraft fire, and, critically, kill German tanks by attacking from above where armor is thinnest. We dive on a panzer column from altitude, Henry explains. Come straight down, nearly vertical. The angle means our bullets hit the top of the tanks, the weakest armour. 8 guns firing API rounds can penetrate top armour on Panzer IVs and lighter tanks. But the real innovation is rockets and bombs. Starting in May 1944, P-47s are equipped with underwing rocket rails carrying 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets, HVAR. 10 rockets per aircraft, each with explosive power equivalent to a 5-inch naval gun shell. The first rocket-equipped P-47s attack German positions on June 7th, the day after D-Day. The results are spectacular. "I pickled all 10 rockets at a German strongpoint," reports Lieutenant Quince Brown. The explosions were massive. The entire position disappeared in smoke and debris. It was more destructive than any bomb I'd ever dropped. Within weeks, rocket-armed P-47s are decimating German ground forces throughout Normandy. July 1944. The Falaise Pocket. As Allied forces break out from Normandy, German armies attempt to retreat eastward. Allied air power, primarily P-47 Thunderbolts, turns the retreat into a slaughter. The Falaise Argentin Pocket. 100,000 German soldiers trapped in a shrinking area, attempting to escape eastward before Allied ground forces close the pocket. The roads are packed with German vehicles, troops, armour, everything retreating in desperation. P-47s attack in waves. Hundreds of Thunderbolts, flying continuous missions from dawn to dusk, massacre the trapped German forces. "It was a turkey shoot," recalls Major Quentin Roosevelt, grandson of President Theodore Roosevelt, flying with the 95th Fighter Squadron. The roads were jammed with German vehicles, bumper to bumper, nowhere to go. We just flew down the columns firing rockets and guns. Vehicles exploding everywhere. It was horrific but necessary. The P-47's load capacity proves critical. A typical ground attack loadout. 8 .50 caliber machine guns with 3,400 rounds total, 10 5-inch rockets, 2 500-pound bombs, or 1 1,000-pound bomb. External fuel tanks for extended range. Total ordnance, over 5,000 pounds of weapons plus fuel. The P-47 carries more weapons than many light bombers and delivers them with fighter bomber precision. Over 8 days, August 12th to 20th, 1944, P-47s fly 3,057 ground attack sorties over the Falaise Pocket. They destroy 3,043 vehicles, trucks, half-tracks, cars, 252 armoured vehicles, tanks, self-propelled guns, 89 artillery pieces, 41 locomotives, unknown thousands of horses. German logistics still relied heavily on horse-drawn transport. "The roads through Falaise look like a junkyard," observes British Army Major Howard Grover, entering the pocket after its closure. Destroyed vehicles everywhere, burned-out tanks, dead horses. It was the most complete destruction of a military force I've ever seen. The Americans' Thunderbolts did this. German survivors report the psychological impact was as devastating as the physical destruction. "We called it Jabber fear, fighter bomber fear," recalls Oberst Colonel Hans von Luck, commander of Panzer Grenadier Regiment 125. "When you hear the sound of P-47s, you know death is coming. You cannot hide. You cannot fight back. You can only wait and hope they don't see you. My men were more afraid of American fighter bombers than they were of Allied tanks." August 1944, the fuel crisis. P-47s don't just destroy German vehicles, they destroy the fuel that powers German operations. Attacking trains carrying fuel, refineries producing fuel, and storage depots stockpiling fuel becomes a primary mission. August 16th, 1944. P-47s from the 36th Fighter Group attack German fuel storage near Chartres, France. Rockets ignite fuel tanks containing an estimated 400,000 gallons of gasoline. The fire burns for 3 days, visible from 50 miles away. "It was the biggest explosion I ever saw," reports Captain William Hovde. "We hit the tank farm with rockets. First tank exploded, then the fire spread. Tank after tank going up, black smoke rising thousands of feet. You could feel the heat from 1,000 feet altitude." The cumulative effect of fuel attacks cripples German mechanized operations. German tanks sit immobilized because P-47s destroyed the fuel trains. German aircraft remain grounded because P-47s bombed the refineries. "We're not just killing tanks," notes General Elwood Pete Quesada, commander of NIC's Tactical Air Command. We're killing their logistics. A tank without fuel is just an expensive pillbox. An aircraft without fuel is just scrap metal. The P-47 is choking the German war machine. September 1944, Market Garden. Operation Market Garden, the ambitious Allied airborne assault into the Netherlands, relies heavily on P-47 ground support. September 17th to 25th, 1944. P-47s fly continuous missions supporting British and American airborne troops. The mission: suppress German ground forces, destroy German armour attempting to attack the paratroopers, cut German supply lines. The 366th Fighter Group flies 734 sorties in support of Market Garden. They claim destruction of 567 vehicles, 47 tanks, 23 artillery positions, 8 ammunition dumps, hundreds of German soldiers killed or wounded. But Market Garden fails. British paratroopers at Arnhem are overrun by German armour. P-47s cannot provide close air support in bad weather and urban terrain where friendly and enemy forces are intermixed. We did everything we could, reports Colonel John Murphy, 366th FG commander. But ground support has limitations. In cities, we can't distinguish friend from foe. In bad weather, we can't fly. And against heavy armour in prepared positions, machine guns and rockets aren't always sufficient. The lesson: air power is devastatingly effective in the right conditions, but it cannot win battles alone. Ground forces must exploit the opportunities air power creates. October 1944, the tank killer debate. As P-47s engage German armour throughout France and the Low Countries, a debate emerges. How effective are fighter bombers against tanks? P-47 pilots claim hundreds of tanks destroyed. Post-battle examination suggests far fewer actual kills. The discrepancy leads to investigation. Intelligence officers examine destroyed German vehicles in Normandy, the Falaise Pocket, and across France. Their findings: actual P-47 anti-armour effectiveness. Trucks and light vehicles, 95% plus kill rate. Machine gun fire and rockets destroy unarmoured vehicles reliably. Half-tracks and light armour, 70 to 80% kill rate. 50 caliber API ammunition penetrates light armour. Rockets are effective. Medium tanks, Panzer IV, Sherman, 15 to 20% kill rate from direct attack. Most kills are actually mobility kills, tracks destroyed, crew abandons vehicle. Ammunition fuel fires, rocket hits external stowage. Crew abandonment, fear of air attack, vehicle undamaged but crew flees. Heavy tanks, Panther, Tiger, 5 to 10% kill rate from direct attack. Heavy frontal and side armour resists 50 caliber fire and most rocket hits. Most heavy tank kills are vehicles abandoned by crews due to fuel shortage, vehicles destroyed by crews to prevent capture, vehicles immobilised, then destroyed by ground forces. We're not killing as many tanks as we thought, admits Colonel Zemke, but we're achieving the mission anyway. When we attack a panzer column, tanks stop moving, crews button up. Some crews abandon vehicles, the column halts. That allows our ground forces to catch up and destroy them with anti-tank weapons. We're not tank killers directly, we're tank stoppers. And in mobile warfare, stopping enemy armour is almost as good as destroying it. The P-47's real anti-armour value is disruption and psychological impact, not direct kills. November 1944. The railway massacres. With German forces retreating across France and Belgium, logistics move primarily by rail. P-47s make rail transport impossibly dangerous. November 2nd, 1944. P-47s from the 362nd Fighter Group attack a German supply train near Koblenz. 18 aircraft, each carrying rockets and bombs, hit the train from multiple directions. It was a turkey shoot, reports Captain Robert Milliken. The train was in open country, no cover, travelling at maybe 30 miles per hour. We came in line astern, each aircraft making a pass. First pass, rockets to stop the locomotive. Second pass, bombs on the cars. Third pass, strafing to finish anything that survived. The train, 73 cars carrying ammunition, fuel and supplies, is completely destroyed. Explosions continue for hours as ammunition cooks off. Similar attacks occur daily across German-occupied territory. Trains become death traps. German logistics officers estimate that 40% of all rail shipments are destroyed or delayed by fighter bomber attacks. "We can't move supplies by day anymore," reports a captured German logistics officer. "The American Thunderbolts destroy everything. We tried moving at night, but they have night fighters too. We tried camouflage, they see through it. We tried anti-aircraft protection. They suppress the flak guns, then attack the trains. There's no defense." The cumulative effect: German forces in the field receive 60% of required supplies. Units are perpetually short of ammunition, fuel, food, and replacement equipment. "The P-47 is starving the German army," observes General Omar Bradley. "Not through dramatic battles, but through relentless destruction of logistics. Every train destroyed is thousands of artillery shells that won't reach German guns, thousands of gallons of fuel that won't reach German tanks. It's unglamorous, but it's winning the war." December 1944, the Battle of the Bulge. Germany's last major offensive, the Ardennes offensive, known as the Battle of the Bulge, demonstrates both the power and limitations of air support. December 16th to 20th, 1944. Bad weather grounds Allied aircraft. German forces advance through the Ardennes, making significant gains. P-47s sit at airfields, unable to fly in fog, snow, and low clouds. "We were helpless," recalls Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gabreski. "The Germans are attacking, our ground forces need support, and we can't get off the ground." It was frustrating beyond words. December 23rd, 1944. Weather clears. P-47s launch in massive numbers, over 600 sorties on December 23rd alone. The effect on German forces is immediate and devastating. Armoured columns that advanced freely for a week are now under constant attack. "The sky filled with American aircraft," reports Oberst von Luck. "Everywhere we looked, P-47s. They attacked our columns, our supply lines, our fuel trucks. We couldn't move in daylight. Everything had to be done at night. It cut our operational tempo by 75%. December 23 to 26, 1944. P-47s fly 2,873 ground attack sorties over the Ardennes. They destroy 1,567 vehicles, 62 tanks, 47 artillery pieces, 23 trains, unknown thousands of German soldiers, but they also suffer significant losses. German forces, concentrated in the Ardennes, deploy maximum anti-aircraft firepower. P-47s encounter the heaviest flak of the war. December 23 to 31st, 1944. 89 P-47s shot down over the Ardennes. Most losses to anti-aircraft fire, not German fighters. "Ground attack is more dangerous than air combat," observes Captain Milliken. "German fighters might shoot you down. German flak will shoot you down. Every mission is flying through a curtain of exploding shells. You just accept that you'll get hit and hope the P-47's toughness saves you." Many pilots survive hits that would destroy other aircraft. Lieutenant James Kunkel, 37 flak hits, flew 90 miles to friendly territory, crash-landed successfully. Captain William Overstreet lost entire left elevator to flak. Controlled aircraft with rudder and ailerons landed safely. Major Glenn Eagleston, engine destroyed by 88mm flak, glided 15 miles, dead stick landing in Allied lines. "The P-47 brings you home" becomes the ground attack pilot's mantra. Other aircraft, you take a few hits and you're done. The P-47 takes dozens of hits and keeps flying. By January 1945, the German offensive is defeated. Air power, primarily P-47 ground attack, is a major factor in the victory. Section 5. The Final Reckoning. January 1945. The Rhine crossings. As Allied forces push toward the Rhine River, Germany's last natural defensive barrier, P-47s provide unprecedented air support. The lessons of 2 years of ground attack operations have been refined into systematic doctrine. The 362nd Fighter Group demonstrates the evolved tactics. Operating from forward airfields in France, they maintain aircraft over the battlefield continuously. Cab rank tactics, where ground controllers direct attacks in real time. Forward Air Controller calls. I have German armour at coordinates XR4425, requesting immediate strike, explains Captain Robert Milliken. We're orbiting 10 miles away, loaded with rockets and bombs. Controller gives us the target. We attack within 5 minutes. Tank column destroyed. We return to orbit, reload, repeat. This responsive system provides ground forces with on-call artillery, but artillery that flies at 350 miles per hour and delivers 5,000 pounds of ordnance per aircraft. March 7, 1945. US forces capture the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen, the only Rhine bridge still intact. German forces immediately attempt to destroy it and prevent Allied exploitation. For 10 days, P-47s fly continuous missions protecting the bridge. Every German attempt to attack, whether by ground forces, artillery or aircraft, faces immediate P-47 response. We flew 312 sorties in 48 hours, reports Colonel John Murphy. Pilots were doing 4 missions per day. We destroyed every German column attempting to approach the bridge, shot down every German aircraft, suppressed every artillery battery. The bridge stood because we owned the sky. The Remagen bridgehead expands. Allied forces pour across the Rhine. By March 17th, the bridge collapses from cumulative damage, but by then, Allied engineers have constructed multiple pontoon bridges. The Rhine barrier is breached. P-47s deserve significant credit for the success. February 1945. The point-blank statistics. The US Strategic Air Forces in Europe publish comprehensive statistics on the combined bomber offensive and escort operations. P-47 Thunderbolt combat record, September 1942 to February 1945. Air-to-air combat, 3,752 enemy aircraft destroyed in air combat. 3,499 enemy aircraft destroyed on the ground. Total, 7,251 enemy aircraft destroyed. American losses, 3,077. P-47s lost in combat. Kill ratio, air combat only, 5.2 to 1 in favour of P-47. Ground attack, 86,000 plus railroad cars destroyed. 9,000 plus locomotives destroyed. 6,000 plus armoured vehicles destroyed. 68,000 plus trucks destroyed. 1,200 plus fuel/ammunition dumps destroyed. 135,000 plus German personnel casualties, killed, wounded. Missions, 546,000 combat sorties flown, 1,934,000 flying hours. Average sortie duration, 3.5 hours. Longest mission, 8.7 hours, Berlin escort. Pilot statistics. 1,853 P-47 pilots killed in action. 958 P-47 pilots prisoners of war. 2,376 P-47 pilots wounded but survived. 261 aces, 5 plus kills, flying P-47s. These numbers tell the story, notes General Carl Spaatz, commander of US Strategic Air Forces Europe. The P-47 destroyed more German aircraft, both air and ground, than any other Allied fighter type. It flew more combat hours, completed more missions, and brought more pilots home alive than any contemporary fighter. But the statistics don't capture the psychological impact. German ground forces feared the P-47 more than any other weapon. The sound of its engine became synonymous with destruction. That fear paralysed German operations, disrupted logistics, and contributed to collapse of military cohesion. March 1945. Luftwaffe obituary. By spring 1945, the Luftwaffe effectively ceases to exist as a fighting force. Fuel shortages ground most aircraft. Pilot losses cannot be replaced. Allied air superiority is absolute. General Adolf Galland, relieved of command in January 1945 after conflicts with Goering, writes a final assessment. The American P-47 Thunderbolt defeated the Luftwaffe. Not alone, the P-51 Mustang, P-38 Lightning, and other fighters contributed. But the P-47 bore the burden of the critical battles in 1943, 1944, when the outcome was still uncertain. We dismissed it initially as too heavy, too clumsy, unsuitable for air combat. We were catastrophically wrong. The P-47 exploited advantages we didn't understand: structural strength that allowed aggressive tactics, dive performance that prevented our fighters from disengaging, firepower that destroyed aircraft with single bursts. But the real advantage was psychological. P-47 pilots fought aggressively because they knew their aircraft could survive damage. Our pilots became defensive because they knew one mistake was fatal. That psychological advantage compounded over time. Aggressive fighters win battles, defensive fighters delay defeat. By 1944, we were defeated. Not because German aircraft were inferior. Technically, the FW-190 and late model Bf-109 matched or exceeded the P-47 in many parameters, but because we couldn't replace losses, couldn't train pilots adequately, couldn't compete with American industrial capacity. The P-47 represented that industrial capacity. 15,683 aircraft produced, more than all German fighter types combined in the same period. You cannot win a war of attrition when outnumbered 3-1 in aircraft and 10-1 in pilots. Gallen's final judgment. The P-47 wasn't the best fighter of the war in any single category, but it was the most effective fighter because it combined adequate performance with overwhelming numbers, robust construction, and tactical flexibility. That combination was unbeatable. April 1945. The last missions. As Allied forces sweep across Germany in the war's final weeks, P-47s transition from hunters to executioners, destroying the remnants of German military power. April 16, 1945. The 56th Fighter Group, the highest-scoring P-47 unit with 1,006 aerial victories, flies what becomes their last major combat mission, attacking German airfields in Bavaria. There was no resistance, recalls Colonel Gabreski, back in combat after escaping from POW camp. We strafed aircraft parked on airfields. They didn't take off to fight us. German pilots just watched their aircraft burn. The Luftwaffe had surrendered without formally surrendering. The 56th destroys 47 German aircraft on the ground that day. No losses. April 25, 1945. P-47s attack a German military convoy near Pilsen, Czechoslovakia. After the attack, a white flag appears. German soldiers surrender to the aircraft circling overhead. They were surrendering to airplanes, reports Lieutenant James Kunkel. Not to ground forces, to us. We couldn't accept their surrender, so we called in ground forces. But the psychological impact was clear. German forces feared air attack more than ground combat. They'd rather surrender to aircraft than face another strafing run. May 7, 1945. Germany surrenders. The war in Europe ends. P-47 units conduct final patrols, not combat missions, but victory flights over defeated Germany. We flew over Munich, recalls Captain Milliken. No flak, no fighters, just devastation below. Cities in ruins, factories destroyed. The country we'd been bombing and strafing for 2 years was finally defeated. And the P-47, the aircraft we hated at first sight, had been there for every step of the victory. May 1945. The final accounting. With war's end, the US Army Air Forces conducts comprehensive analysis of fighter effectiveness. Comparative Fighter Statistics, European Theatre, 1942 to 1945. P-47 Thunderbolt. Aircraft produced, 15,683. Combat losses, 3,077, 19.6%. Enemy aircraft destroyed, air, 3,752. Enemy aircraft destroyed, ground, 3,499. Cost per kill, 0.82. P-47s lost per enemy destroyed. Pilot survival rate, 67.2%. P-51 Mustang. Aircraft produced, 15,486. Combat losses, 2,520. 16.3%. Enemy aircraft destroyed, air, 4,950. Enemy aircraft destroyed, ground, 4,131. Cost per kill, 0.51. P-51s lost per enemy destroyed. Pilot survival rate, 71.8%. P-38 Lightning, aircraft produced, 10,037. Combat losses, 1,758, 17.5%. Enemy aircraft destroyed, air, 1,771. Enemy aircraft destroyed, ground, 749. Cost per kill, 0.99. P-38s lost per enemy destroyed. Pilot survival rate, 64.3%. The statistics prompt debate. Was the P-51 superior to the P-47? Different missions, different strengths, argues General Pete Quesada. The P-51 was the better long-range escort fighter, lighter, faster, longer range. It excelled at air combat. The P-47 was the better fighter bomber, tougher, heavier payload, better survivability. It excelled at ground attack and could hold its own in air combat. We needed both. The P-51 cleared the skies. The P-47 destroyed what was on the ground. Together, they won the war. Colonel Zemke, who flew both types, offers perspective. I loved the P-51. Beautiful aircraft, wonderful performance. But if I'm getting shot at by ground fire, I want to be in a P-47. The Jug brings you home. August 1945. The Pacific Endgame. While P-47s won the war in Europe, they played a smaller but significant role in the Pacific. P-47s arrived in the Pacific Theater in 1943, primarily in the Southwest Pacific and Philippines campaigns. The Pacific War emphasized different characteristics. Pacific advantages. Long range with drop tanks, critical for Pacific distances. Excellent dive bombing capability. Robust construction, important over water, ditching survivability. Heavy firepower, effective against Japanese aircraft and ground targets. Pacific challenges. Japanese fighters, Zero, Oscar, outturned P-47 dramatically. High altitude performance less relevant. Pacific combat often at low altitude. Maintenance complexity in jungle conditions. Weight penalty on short jungle airstrips. P-47s scored 697 aerial victories in the Pacific, respectable but far fewer than in Europe. The primary mission was ground attack, supporting island invasions, attacking Japanese shipping, destroying ground installations. The 348th Fighter Group, the Flying Knights, demonstrates P-47 effectiveness in the Pacific. Operating from New Guinea and later the Philippines, they specialize in attacking Japanese shipping and infrastructure. We sank more Japanese ships with P-47s than some destroyer squadrons, claims Colonel Neil Kirby, 348th FG Commander and Medal of Honor recipient. Bombs and rockets against cargo ships, troop transports, barges. We cut Japanese supply lines throughout the Southwest Pacific. June 1945. P-47s participate in the Okinawa campaign, providing close air support for ground forces, fighting the last major battle before the planned invasion of Japan. August 6th and 9th, 1945. Atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrenders, August 15th. P-47s fly final patrols over Japan, then participate in the occupation. The war is over. September 1945. Legacy assessment. As demobilization begins, military analysts assess the P-47's contribution. Strategic impact. Air superiority. P-47s destroyed over 7,000 German aircraft, contributing decisively to Allied air superiority over Europe. This enabled strategic bombing, protected ground forces, and facilitated invasion operations. Ground support. P-47 ground attack destroyed German logistics infrastructure, paralyzed movement, and broke German military cohesion. This shortened the war by an estimated 6 to 9 months. Pilot survival. P-47's robust construction resulted in highest pilot survival rate of any fighter. This preserved experienced pilots who trained next generation, force multiplication through institutional knowledge. Industrial victory. 15,683 P-47s produced demonstrated American industrial capacity. Mass production of adequate fighters defeated smaller numbers of superior fighters through overwhelming numbers. Tactical innovations. The P-47 forced evolution of fighter tactics. Energy fighting pioneered vertical tactics, boom and zoom, that became standard doctrine. Fighter-bomber role proved single-engine fighters could deliver heavy ordnance effectively. Survivability design demonstrated value of robust construction over maximum performance. Firepower doctrine 8.50 caliber guns became standard US fighter armament. Design legacy. Post-war jet fighters incorporated P-47 lessons. Heavy construction for survivability. F-84, F-86. Multiple gun armament. F-86 with 6.50 caliber. Fighter-bomber multi-role capability. F-84, F-105. Pilot protection prioritized in design. Armored cockpits, redundant systems. The P-47 changed how we think about fighters, concludes General Hap Arnold, Commanding General of US Army Air Forces. Before the P-47, we prioritized speed, climb, maneuverability, dogfighting characteristics. The P-47 taught us that survivability, firepower, and tactical flexibility matter more in actual combat. The P-47 wasn't designed to be the fastest or most maneuverable. It was designed to complete missions and bring pilots home. That philosophy won the war and continues to influence fighter design today. November 1945. Awards ceremony, Washington, D.C. Major Robert F. Johnson stands at attention as General Hap Arnold pins the Distinguished Service Cross to his uniform. Johnson is being honoured for his 27 aerial victories and for surviving one of the most brutal combats of the war. But Johnson's real story isn't the medals. It's June 26, 1943, the mission that proved the P-47's legendary toughness and changed how pilots viewed their aircraft. Flashback. June 26, 1943, over France. Lieutenant Robert Johnson is escorting B-17s back from a mission to Villers-Cotterêts when his flight encounters 16 FW-190s. The dogfight is chaotic, aircraft swirling, guns firing, pilots shouting warnings over the radio. Johnson makes a critical mistake. He fixates on a target and doesn't check his six. An FW-190 piloted by Oberleutnant Egon Meyer, one of the Luftwaffe's most experienced aces, gets on Johnson's tail. "I saw tracers going past my canopy," Johnson recalls. "By the time I realised I was being shot, it was too late to evade effectively. I broke hard left, but he was already firing." 20mm cannon shells tear into Johnson's P-47. The first burst hits the tail, destroying the rudder and elevator. The second burst hits the right wing, tearing away a section of aileron. The third burst hits the fuselage behind the cockpit, destroying the radio and oxygen system. "I thought I was dead," Johnson says. The airplane was shaking itself apart, controls barely responding. "I looked back and saw daylight through holes in the fuselage, holes you could put your fist through." Meyer continues the attack. More cannon shells strike the P-47. The canopy shatters. Fragments hit Johnson in the face and shoulder. The instrument panel explodes. The throttle control is shot away. "I couldn't bail out. The canopy was jammed. I couldn't fight. My guns were jammed. I couldn't even surrender. I was over France. No friendly territory within range. I could only sit there and take it." Meyer makes pass after pass, pouring cannon fire into the crippled P-47. Johnson counts 21 separate cannon shell hits, over 200 machine gun bullet impacts. But the P-47 doesn't explode. The massive R-2800 radial engine absorbs rounds that would have reached the cockpit in a liquid-cooled engine fighter. The robust airframe holds together despite catastrophic damage. The self-sealing fuel tanks prevent fire despite multiple punctures. "I was waiting to die," Johnson recounts, every second expecting the airplane to disintegrate or catch fire. But it kept flying. The engine kept running. I still had some control authority. Meyer finally breaks off, either out of ammunition or convinced Johnson is finished. The crippled P-47 limps toward the English Channel. Johnson has no radio to call for help, no oxygen system. He's descending from 24,000 feet to stay conscious. No functioning instruments to navigate, just a compass and the hope that he can reach England before the aircraft fails. The Channel crossing is terrifying. At any moment the engine could quit, the structure could fail, the aircraft could simply fall apart. Johnson is flying by feel, nursing every mile of distance. I talked to the airplane, Johnson admits, told her to hang on, told her we could make it together. It sounds crazy, but I needed something to focus on besides the terror. After 40 minutes of flight, Johnson sees the English coast. Then an airfield, RAF Manston, an emergency landing strip for damaged aircraft. I had no hydraulics, no brakes, no flaps, no gear extension. I cranked the gear down manually, lined up for landing. The airplane was mushing, barely controllable, but she was still flying. Johnson touches down at 120 miles per hour, far too fast, with no flaps and questionable gear. The P-47 bounces, swerves, but stays on the runway. With no brakes, Johnson runs off the end of the runway into the grass before stopping. I just sat there for a minute, Johnson says. Couldn't believe I was alive. Couldn't believe the airplane made it. When mechanics examine the aircraft, they're stunned. 21 cannon shell hits, 20mm and 30mm. 207 machine gun bullet impacts. Entire tail section destroyed. Right aileron missing. Rudder 60% destroyed. Oxygen system destroyed. Radio destroyed. Half the instrument panel destroyed. Canopy shattered. Fuselage perforated with dozens of holes. This airplane should not have flown, states the chief mechanic. By all rights it should have exploded, disintegrated, or fallen from the sky. The fact that it brought Lieutenant Johnson home is a testament to Republic's engineering. The aircraft, tail number 42-8487, nicknamed Half Pint, is written off as too damaged to repair. But Johnson keeps a piece of the wreckage for the rest of his life. The P-47 saved me, Johnson says simply. I hated the Jug when I first saw it. After June 26th, I loved it. That airplane absorbed punishment that would have killed me in any other fighter, and it brought me home. Johnson returns to combat. Over the next year, he scores 27 aerial victories, becoming the fourth highest scoring P-47 ace. Every time he flies, he remembers June 26th, the day the fat Jug proved it was built for one purpose: keeping pilots alive. Francis Gabby Gabreski, 28 kills. Colonel Francis Gabreski, top-scoring P-47 ace with 28 victories, offers a different perspective on the aircraft. I grew up in Polish immigrant family, Gabreski explains. Worked class, practical. My father was a mill worker. He taught me that tools don't need to be beautiful, they need to work. The P-47 was the mill worker's fighter. Gabreski joins the 56th Fighter Group in 1942, transitioning from P-47s from the start. Unlike pilots who flew Spitfires first, Gabreski has no elegant British fighter to compare. The P-47 is his baseline. I didn't think it was ugly or clumsy, Gabreski says. I thought it was powerful. That big radial engine, those 8 guns, the solid feel of the controls. This was a fighter that could take punishment and dish it out. Gabreski's tactical approach emphasises the P-47's strengths. Patient altitude advantage. I'd climbed to 30,000 feet before entering the combat area. German fighters had to climb to reach the bombers, burning energy. I'd be above them, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to attack. Disciplined attack. One pass, guns blazing, then zoom back to altitude. No dogfighting, no turning combat. Hit hard and get out. The P-47 excels at this. Ruthless gunnery. At 300 yards, all 8 guns converge. I'd close to that range, fire a 2-second burst. That's 200 rounds hitting the target. German fighters don't survive 200 hits. November 1943. Gabreski shoots down 5 German fighters in one mission, making him an ace in a day. All 5 kills come from classic boom and zoom attacks. The first German never saw me, Gabreski recounts. I dove from 28,000 to 20,000 feet, came up behind him at 450 miles per hour, fired at 300 yards. He exploded. I zoomed back to altitude, found another target, repeated. 5 times in 15 minutes. By D-Day, Gabreski has 28 kills, making him America's top-scoring European theatre ace. Then, on July 20th, 1944, disaster. During a strafing run on a German airfield, Gabreski's propeller strikes the ground. The P-47 crashes. Gabreski survives, but is captured. "I spent 10 months as a POW, Gabreski reflects. The entire time I thought about that P-47. If I'd been flying any other fighter, I probably would have died in the crash. But the P-47's robust construction saved me. The aircraft absorbed the impact, protected the cockpit, gave me a chance to survive." Gabreski is released when the war ends, returns to service, flies jets in Korea, and retires as a full colonel. But he never forgets the P-47. "That airplane made me an ace," Gabreski states. "Not because it was the best fighter, but because it let me fight my way. Patient, disciplined, aggressive when the moment was right." The P-47 rewarded smart tactics and protected pilots who made mistakes. That's why it won. Hubert "Hub" Zemke, the tactical innovator. Colonel Hubert Zemke commanded the 56th Fighter Group, the unit that scored more P-47 victories, 1,006, than any other group in any theatre. Zemke's contribution isn't just kills, it's doctrine. He's the officer who figured out how to fight in the P-47 and taught an entire generation of pilots. "When we got the P-47, nobody knew how to use it," Zemke recalls. "The aircraft didn't fit existing doctrine. It was too heavy for traditional dogfighting, too specialised for the tactics we'd been taught. So I studied it, flew it to its limits, figured out what it could do that other fighters couldn't." Zemke's innovations. The Zemke fan. A tactical formation where flights spread out vertically. One flight at 25,000 feet, another at 28,000 feet, another at 30,000 feet. This gave three-dimensional coverage of the combat area and ensured someone always had altitude advantage. Aggressive escort. Previous doctrine: stay close to bombers, react defensively to attacks. Zemke's doctrine: patrol ahead of bombers, intercept German fighters before they reach the bombers, force the Germans to fight on American terms. Energy management discipline. Zemke drilled his pilots. Never give up altitude for speed in a turn. Altitude is energy. Energy is life. Fight vertical, not horizontal. Gunnery standards. Zemke installed gun cameras on all aircraft and reviewed every mission. Pilots who wasted ammunition by firing at excessive range were grounded for additional training. 8 guns mean nothing if you can't hit. Get close, 300 yards, then fire short bursts. Kill efficiently. The 56th Fighter Group, under Zemke's command, becomes the highest-scoring P-47 unit. 1,006 aerial victories, official. 677 ground victories. 39 aces produced. Lowest loss rate per victory of any fighter group. "Hub taught us how to win," recalls Captain Walker Mahurin, a 56th FG ace. Not through individual brilliance, though Hub was brilliant, but through systematic tactics that any competent pilot could execute. The 56th was successful because we had doctrine, discipline, and a commander who understood the airplane better than anyone. October 30th, 1944. Zemke's luck runs out. While flying his P-47 through a severe thunderstorm, the aircraft breaks apart in extreme turbulence. Zemke bails out, parachutes into Germany, and is captured. He spends the rest of the war as a POW. "I survived the breakup because of the P-47's robust design," Zemke reflects. "Even in structural failure, the cockpit remained intact enough for me to bail out. Other fighters would have disintegrated completely. The P-47 gave me a chance." After the war, Zemke becomes a test pilot, flies jets, retires as a colonel. But his legacy is the 56th Fighter Group and the tactical doctrine that turned the heavy, maligned P-47 into the most effective fighter in Europe. Quince Brown, the ground attack specialist. Lieutenant Quince Brown never became an ace. He scored only 2 aerial victories. But he flew 100 ground attack missions, survived being shot down twice, and became one of the most effective fighter-bomber pilots in the European theatre. Air combat was exciting, Brown says. But ground attack was where the P-47 made its real contribution. We weren't just shooting down fighters. We were destroying the German war machine piece by piece. Brown's typical mission: load the P-47 with 2 500-pound bombs, 10 rockets, and full ammunition. Fly to the target area. Dive bomb critical infrastructure, bridges, rail yards, fuel depots. Strafe targets of opportunity. Return home. Repeat daily. Every mission was terrifying, Brown admits. Ground attack means flying low, 200 feet, at high speed through concentrated anti-aircraft fire. German flak was deadly. You'd see explosions everywhere, feel shrapnel hitting the aeroplane, watch friends get shot down. March 15, 1945. Brown is attacking a German supply column near Koblenz when 88mm flak hits his P-47's engine. The entire engine seized, Brown recalls. Massive vibration, then silence. I'm at 1,500 feet, no altitude for manoeuvring, over enemy territory. The P-47, even with a dead engine, glides. Brown aims for a field behind American lines, 12 miles away. I'm gliding at 180 miles per hour, losing 500 feet per minute. I calculated I'd reach Allied lines with maybe 200 feet altitude, enough for a crash landing if the field was clear. Brown clears the front lines with 150 feet to spare, spots a snow-covered field, and executes a dead-stick landing. No power, no flaps, wheels-up belly landing at 120 miles per hour. The P-47 slid across the snow for 400 yards before stopping, Brown recounts. I climbed out without a scratch. The airplane was totaled, but it brought me home one last time. Brown's assessment: the P-47 was the perfect ground attack aircraft. Tough enough to survive ground fire, powerful enough to carry heavy loads, stable enough for accurate dive bombing. We lost pilots, but we would have lost twice as many in any other fighter. And when you got hit, which happened constantly, the P-47 gave you a chance. Engine out? You could glide. On fire? Maybe you could nurse it to friendly territory. Shop full of holes? It kept flying. The Jug forgave mistakes and absorbed punishment. That's why we loved it. Section 7. The Jug that refused to die. 1946 present. The enduring legacy. With World War II over, the P-47 Thunderbolt faces the fate of most wartime aircraft: obsolescence and scrapping. Jet aircraft are the future. Piston engine fighters are relics. Except the P-47 refuses to die quietly. 1946 to 1950. Post-war service. While most P-47s are scrapped or sold as surplus, many continue flying. Air National Guard. 47 Guard units operate P-47s through the late 1940s, providing air defense and training. The aircraft's ruggedness and simplicity make it ideal for part-time citizen airmen. Foreign air forces. 58 nations receive P-47s through military aid programs. Brazil, 88 aircraft. China, 102 aircraft. France, 446 aircraft. Italy, 75 aircraft. Turkey, 56 aircraft, and dozens more. These P-47s serve for years, even decades, in air forces that cannot afford jet fighters. The Peruvian Air Force operates P-47s until 1966, 21 years after the war ends. The last combat sortie by a P-47 anywhere in the world. Peru, 1965. Counterinsurgency operations in the Amazon. 1950-1953. Korea. When the Korean War begins in June 1950, the US Air Force has retired most of its P-47s. But the aircraft returns briefly to combat in an unexpected role. The Republic of Korea Air Force, equipped with F-51 Mustangs, requests additional ground attack aircraft. The USAF provides 50 refurbished P-47Ds from storage. South Korean pilots fly these aircraft in ground attack missions through 1951-1953. The P-47's durability proves valuable against North Korean anti-aircraft fire. The airplane was already obsolete, recalls one South Korean pilot. But for ground attack against troops and trucks, it was still effective, and it could take damage. We lost many aircraft to ground fire, but the P-47 losses were proportionally lower than other types. The last P-47 combat mission in Korea. March 1953, attacking supply routes north of the 38th parallel. 1955, the Racing Thunderbolt. In civilian life, surplus P-47s find new purpose: air racing. The Cleveland Air Races feature several modified P-47s, stripped of military equipment, tuned for maximum speed. The heavy radial engine fighter proves surprisingly competitive. Cook Cleland, a Navy Reserve pilot and air racing enthusiast, purchases a P-47D and modifies it extensively. Engine boosted to 3,000 horsepower, weight reduced by 2,000 pounds, aerodynamics cleaned up. People thought the P-47 was too heavy and draggy for racing, Cleland explains, but I saw potential. The R2800 engine is immensely powerful. With modifications, the P-47 can hit 500 plus miles per hour. Cleland's P-47 competes in the Thompson Trophy race, achieving speeds over 470 miles per hour, competitive with P-51 Mustangs and Sea Furies. The old warrior proves there's still fight in the jug. But air racing's golden age fades by the late 1950s. The P-47s return to museums or scrapyards. 1960 to 1990, museum preservation. As veterans age and aviation history becomes valued, efforts begin to preserve P-47s. The problem? Almost all were scrapped. Of 15,683 P-47s produced, fewer than 50 survive by 1960. The American Air Museum at Duxford, England, preserves several P-47s, including aircraft flown by famous aces. The National Air and Space Museum acquires Francis Gabreski's P-47. The Smithsonian restores Robert Johnson's replacement aircraft. His original half-pint was scrapped. But most surviving P-47s are in poor condition, stored outdoors, deteriorating from weather and neglect. In 1978, a group of warbird enthusiasts led by Stephen Gray begins a systematic effort to restore P-47s to flying condition. The Fighter Collection at Duxford restores P-47D 42-26671 to airworthy status, one of only 6 flying P-47s worldwide. It's important that these aircraft fly, Gray explains. Seeing a P-47 in a museum is educational. Hearing the R2800 engine roar to life, watching it take off, seeing it fly, that's visceral. That's understanding what these pilots experienced. The restoration reveals the P-47's engineering brilliance. Modern engineers examine the structure and are impressed, notes Restoration Chief Tony Ditheridge. The design is overbuilt by modern standards, heavier and stronger than necessary, but that overbuilding is what allowed the aircraft to survive catastrophic damage in combat. Republic's engineers understood that survivability requires margin. 2000s, the digital rediscovery. The 21st century brings renewed interest in the P-47 through digital media. Documentary films, the History Channel, Discovery Channel, and PBS produce multiple documentaries focusing on P-47 combat operations. Interviews with surviving pilots, now in their 80s and 90s, preserve first-hand accounts. Video games, combat flight simulators including IL-2 Sturmovik, War Thunder, and DCS World feature highly detailed P-47 models. Millions of gamers worldwide experience simulated P-47 combat, introducing new generations to the aircraft. YouTube and social media. Airshow footage of flying P-47s reaches millions. Videos of the R2800 engine starting, the sound of 850 caliber guns firing blanks at demonstrations, and aerobatic displays generate tens of millions of views. The P-47's reputation evolves. To World War II veterans, it was the rugged fighter that brought them home. To modern enthusiasts, it's an icon of American industrial might and engineering excellence. 2024, the survivors. Today, approximately 40 P-47 Thunderbolts survive in museums and private collections worldwide. Of these, only 6 to 8 remain airworthy. Flying P-47s, 2024. P-47D, Tar Heel Hal, Tri-State Warbird Museum, Ohio, flies regularly at airshows. P-47D, Snafu, Planes of Fame Museum, California, airworthy, limited flying. P-47D, No Guts, No Glory. Flying Heritage Collection, Washington. Flies occasionally. P-47D-40, Fighter Collection, Duxford, UK. Flies at European air shows. P-47D, Jackie's Revenge, Commemorative Air Force, Texas. Limited airshow appearances. P-47D, Private Owner, based in France, occasionally flown. The maintenance burden is enormous. The R2800 engine requires specialist knowledge, increasingly rare, as mechanics who worked on radial engines retire or die. Parts are scarce. Many components must be custom fabricated. We're spending $50,000 per year just to keep our P-47 airworthy, explains one warbird owner. Engine overhauls cost $250,000, but it's worth it. When that aeroplane flies, people understand history in a way no book or museum display can convey. Robert Johnson's final flight, December 27, 1998. Robert S. Johnson dies at age 78. The pilot who survived 21 cannon hits and over 200 machine gun strikes in June 1943 passes away peacefully. At his funeral, a P-47 Thunderbolt performs the missing man formation flyover. 4 aircraft in formation, one peeling away to symbolize the fallen pilot. Bob loved that airplane, recalls his son, Robert Jr. He'd tell the story of June 26, 1943, to anyone who'd listen. How the P-47 took catastrophic damage and brought him home. How he went from hating the Jug to loving it. How it saved his life. Near the end, when he was dying, he talked about that mission. Said he could still hear the engine running despite all the damage. Still feel the controls responding. Still remember the relief when he saw the English coast. The P-47 gave him 55 extra years of life. He never forgot that. Johnson's medals, including the Distinguished Service Cross, are donated to the National Museum of the United States Air Force. His logbook, detailing 91 combat missions and 27 victories, is preserved in the archives. But his real legacy is the testimony. The P-47 saved me when I should have died. It was the toughest fighter ever built. Francis Gabreski's testament, January 31, 2002. Colonel Francis Gabreski dies at age 83. America's top-scoring P-47 ace and a Korean War jet ace, 6.5 kills in F-86 Sabres, Gabreski served his country for over 40 years. In his final interview, recorded 6 months before his death, Gabreski reflects on the P-47. I flew many aircraft, P-47, P-51, F-86, F-104, others. Each had strengths. But if I had to go back to combat tomorrow, knowing I'd face intense flak and determined enemies, I'd choose the P-47. Why? Because it brings you home. The P-51 was faster, prettier, better in some ways. But the P-47 was tougher, more forgiving, built to protect pilots. When you're getting shot at, that matters more than speed or elegance. We called it a Jug. Not affectionately at first, we were mocking it. But the name evolved. By 1944, Jug was said with respect, even love. The aeroplane that looked like a milk bottle became the fighter we trusted with our lives. And it never let us down, never. Gabreski's funeral draws thousands, fellow pilots, military officials, aviation enthusiasts. A formation of 4 P-47s flies overhead. 3 of the 6 flying P-47s worldwide were brought together for this tribute. One breaking away in the missing man formation. The sound of those R2800 engines, deep, powerful, unmistakable, echoes across Arlington National Cemetery. Veterans in the crowd, many now in their 80s, stand at attention, tears streaming down weathered faces. They're not crying for Gabreski alone. They're crying for the comrades who didn't come home, for the youth they spent in combat, for the airplane that protected them through it all. The Jug, the fighter they hated, then loved, then never forgot. 2024, the Museum Exhibition. The National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, opens a comprehensive P-47 exhibition. Thunderbolt, the fighter they said couldn't fight. The centerpiece is P-47D-30RA S/N 44-20371, the aircraft Robert Johnson flew after his original was destroyed. fully restored, displayed in the markings Johnson flew in 1944, surrounded by artifacts and testimonials. Interactive displays allow visitors to sit in a P-47 cockpit simulator and experience the controls, hear recordings of veterans describing combat, view gun camera footage from actual missions, compare the P-47 to contemporary fighters, FW-190, BF-109, Spitfire, P-51. Understand the engineering that made the P-47 survive. The exhibition's conclusion features statistics. P-47 Thunderbolt, final accounting. Production, 15,683 aircraft, 1941 to 1945. Combat sorties, 546,000 plus. Flying hours, 1,934,000 plus. Enemy aircraft destroyed, air, 3,752. Enemy aircraft destroyed, ground, 3,499. Ground targets destroyed, 160,000 plus vehicles, 9,000 plus locomotives, 86,000 plus rail cars. American losses, 3,077. P-47s lost in combat. Pilot casualties, 1,853 killed, 958 POW. Pilot survival rate, 67.2%, highest of any fighter. Medal of Honor recipients, P-47 pilots, 2. Major James Howard, January 11, 1944. Colonel Neil Kirby, October 11, 1943. Aces produced, 261 pilots with 5+ kills in P-47s. Conclusion text. The P-47 Thunderbolt was dismissed as too fat to fight when it entered service. Pilots hated it. Luftwaffe intelligence dismissed it. Critics called it a flying bathtub, a milk jug, unsuited for air combat. They were catastrophically wrong. The P-47 destroyed more enemy aircraft than any other Allied fighter in the European theatre. It flew more combat hours. It brought more pilots home alive. It pioneered fighter-bomber operations. It broke the Luftwaffe through relentless attrition. Not through speed or agility, but through toughness, firepower, and a design philosophy that prioritized pilot survival over performance specifications. The P-47 proved that in warfare, adequate in overwhelming numbers beats superior in limited quantities. That survivability enables aggressive tactics. That industrial capacity determines strategic outcomes. The pilots who flew it learned to love it. The enemies who faced it learned to fear it. The historians who study it recognize it as one of the most effective fighters ever built. The Jug. Too fat to fight. Yet it hunted the Luftwaffe to extinction. Epilogue. The Sound of Thunder. July 2024. EAA AirVenture Oshkosh, Wisconsin. The world's largest aviation gathering hosts a special P-47 reunion. 4 of the 6 flying P-47s worldwide gather for a formation flight, the largest assembly of flying Thunderbolts in decades. 75,000 spectators watch as the 4 P-47s taxi to the runway. The R-2800 engines bark and rumble, a sound that hasn't been heard in formation since 1945. Among the spectators, World War II veterans, now in their late 90s and early 100s. Men who flew P-47s, who survived because of P-47s, who watched friends die in P-47s. The 4 aircraft take off in sequence, wheels up, gear retracting, climbing into the Wisconsin sky. They form up, close formation, wingtip to wingtip, and make a low pass over the crowd. The sound is overwhelming. 4 R-2800 engines producing 8,000 combined horsepower. The deep roar that struck terror into German soldiers from 1943, 1945. The sound of American industrial might made audible. In the crowd, 98-year-old Edward Michael, P-47 pilot, 56th Fighter Group, 11 victories, stands watching. Tears run down his face. "That's my airplane," he says to his grandson. "That's the Jug. I flew her for 2 years. She brought me home every time. I thought I'd never hear that sound again." The P-47s make a second pass, then a third. On the 4th pass, one aircraft breaks away, performing the missing man formation for all the P-47 pilots who didn't come home. Michael salutes. Around him, other veterans, some in wheelchairs, some using canes, all aged beyond their years, salute as well. The 3 remaining P-47s climb into the distance, their engine sound fading but never forgotten. Too fat to fight, too tough to die. The Jug, forever.